November 13th, 1942, 11:01 a.m. The USS Juneau erupts in an explosion so massive it vaporizes 6,000 tons of steel in 3 seconds, killing 687 sailors, including all 5 Sullivan brothers. What naval intelligence never disclosed was that the light cruiser was not carrying standard ammunition. She was transporting experimental VT proximity-fused anti-aircraft shells developed in absolute secrecy at Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory. For 76 years, families believed their sons died from a single Japanese torpedo hit during the Naval Battle of Guadalcanal. The wreck, discovered in 2018 at 14,200 feet, tells a radically different story. Evidence scattered across a half-mile debris field proves the Juneau's destruction came from within, triggered by ammunition that should not have been aboard a frontline warship. Recently declassified Manhattan Project documents reveal the proximity fuses contained radioactive components, making the Juneau's cargo too dangerous to acknowledge and too valuable to lose. What was America's most secret weapon doing aboard a ship carrying 5 brothers? And why did the Navy spend 76 years hiding the truth about their deaths? The answer lies in Project Curare, the code name for America's most secret anti-aircraft weapon development program. The Juneau was carrying 2,847 experimental VT proximity fuses developed at Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory under Dr. Merle Tuve. These fuses contained radioactive radium-226 components that enabled shells to detonate automatically when approaching enemy aircraft, technology that would make Japanese kamikaze attacks obsolete. Each fuse was worth $1,000 in 1942, making the Juneau's cargo worth more than 3 destroyers. But the radioactive components also made the ammunition incredibly unstable. Navy ordnance knew that battle damage could trigger chain reactions, but the strategic value of the technology outweighed the risk to any single ship. What families were never told is that the 5 Sullivan brothers died protecting a weapon that would save thousands of American lives if it survived to reach the front lines. The VT fuse, called the variable time fuse, represented the Manhattan Project's lesser-known cousin. While America's best scientific minds were splitting atoms in Los Alamos, another group of elite physicists were developing what Admiral Lewis Strauss later called second only to the atomic bomb in the war's scientific developments. These proximity fuses eliminated the need for direct hits on aircraft. Instead, they could detect nearby metallic objects and detonate automatically, creating deadly shrapnel clouds that could take down Japanese planes without requiring perfect aim. The technology represented such a quantum leap in anti-aircraft capability that in early 1942, a study by the Naval Research Laboratory concluded a single destroyer equipped with shells fitted with proximity fuses could destroy 8 times more enemy aircraft than conventional ammunition. The implications were staggering. It could potentially neutralize Japan's air superiority almost overnight. But the technology came with severe drawbacks. The proximity fuses contained miniaturized radio transmitters powered by batteries that used radioactive material. This made them exquisitely sensitive to heat, shock, and electromagnetic fields, precisely the conditions found aboard a warship in combat. Navy ordnance officials documented over 17 instances of spontaneous detonation during laboratory testing, yet the pressure to deploy remained immense. The USS Juneau's final mission was not just tactical, it was strategic. She was to deliver these revolutionary weapons to Henderson Field on Guadalcanal, where American forces were being hammered by Japanese air attacks. The weapons could tip the balance of the entire Pacific campaign if they reached their destination. The path to the USS Juneau's destruction began years earlier, in the laboratories of America's most prestigious institutions. In September 1940, British scientists shared advanced radar technology with American counterparts as part of the Tizard mission. Among the delegation was physicist William Buteman. He proposed an audacious idea. If radar could detect aircraft, why could not a miniaturized version be installed in artillery shells to determine the optimal detonation point? American scientists at the Carnegie Institution, led by Dr. Merle Tuve, immediately recognized the potential. By January 1941, they produced the first working prototype, but it was unstable and required radioactive material to power the miniaturized electronics. When America entered the war after Pearl Harbor, the program accelerated dramatically under the newly formed Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory. The timeline from there shows the mounting pressure that would eventually doom the USS Juneau. In March 1942, Pacific Fleet Commander Admiral Chester Nimitz sent an urgent request for any technology that could counter Japanese air superiority following the loss of the carrier USS Lexington. In May 1942, the first production batch of 500 VT fuses was completed under absolute secrecy. Security was so tight that workers were not told what they were building. They assembled components without seeing the finished product. In July 1942, a test shipment aboard USS Helena proved devastatingly effective during the Battle of Kula Gulf, where proximity fuse shells destroyed 3 Japanese aircraft with indirect hits. Admiral William Halsey demanded immediate full-scale deployment. By September 1942, Japanese intelligence reports mentioned a new American shell technology that explodes without contact. The race to deploy before the enemy could understand the technology intensified. In October 1942, Navy Ordnance issued a classified directive ordering accelerated deployment despite documented safety concerns. Internal memos reveal that engineers warned of catastrophic chain reaction potential if storage compartments are compromised. On October 29, 1942, the Sullivan brothers George Francis Joseph Madison and Albert reported for duty aboard USS Juneau. None were informed of the special cargo the ship would carry. On November 8, 1942, under cover of darkness, 2,847 proximity fuses were loaded aboard USS Juneau at Noumea Harbor in New Caledonia. The transfer was conducted without standard safety protocols to maintain secrecy. On November 12, 1942, intelligence warned of Japanese submarine activity around Guadalcanal, but USS Juneau proceeded on its mission, carrying both America's most advanced weapons technology and 5 brothers from the same family, despite Navy regulations against siblings serving on the same vessel. The naval brass faced an impossible dilemma. The technology needed to reach the front immediately, but transporting it safely required precautions that would expose its existence. The decision was made to gamble with both the technology and the lives of the crew. A single light cruiser would carry America's most explosive secret into the most dangerous waters of the Pacific. The final hours of USS Juneau unfold like a Greek tragedy, inevitable and devastating. Having survived the bruising naval battle of Guadalcanal the previous night, Juneau limped away with the American task force, nursing a damaged port side from an earlier torpedo hit that had severely compromised her structural integrity. Worse still, the initial torpedo had damaged the specialized storage compartment that housed the proximity fuses. At 10:45 in the morning, Japanese submarine I-26, commanded by Lieutenant Commander Minoru Yokota, tracked the American cruiser formation through his periscope. He noted that Juneau was listing slightly, marking her as the optimal target. At 10:58 in the morning, I-26 fired a spread of 3 Type 95 torpedoes at an optimal range of 1,000 yards. The submarine log recovered after the war note's perfect firing solution, anticipating multiple hits. At 11:01 in the morning, a single torpedo struck Juneau's port side precisely where the earlier battle damage had occurred. Under normal circumstances, this would have been survivable. The ship might have been lost, but most of the crew would have had time to evacuate. At 11:01 and 15 seconds a.m., the torpedo ruptures the specially reinforced compartment housing the proximity fuses. Seawater rushes in, creating an electrical short in multiple fuse units simultaneously. The radioactive radium-226 components begin reacting with the surrounding high explosives. At 11:01 and 18 seconds a.m., a chain reaction begins among the proximity fuses. Naval weapons specialist Dr. Thomas Bowen would later calculate that each detonating fuse triggered approximately 7 surrounding units, creating an exponential cascade. At 11:01 and 20 seconds a.m., all 2,847 proximity fuses detonate in a catastrophic explosion equivalent to approximately 500 tons of TNT, roughly 1/30th the power of the atomic bomb that would later destroy Hiroshima. The blast is so intense that it vaporizes the entire midship section in less than 3 seconds. At 11:01 and 25 seconds a.m., the shockwave from the explosion is so powerful that fragments of steel are later found embedded in the hulls of ships more than a mile away. Survivor Frank Holmgren aboard the nearby USS San Francisco later recalled that the Juneau just disappeared. One second she was there, and the next, there was nothing but a cloud where a ship had been. At 11:02 a.m., nothing remains of the Juneau except scattered debris and burning fuel oil. Captain Lyman Swenson and 687 crew members, including all 5 Sullivan brothers, are instantly killed by the explosion. Only 10 sailors on the far edges of the ship survived the initial blast. The catastrophic nature of the explosion was not consistent with a standard torpedo hit. Typical torpedo damage would have allowed the ship to sink slowly, giving crew members time to abandon ship. The Juneau, however, was obliterated in seconds, a telltale sign of internal ammunition detonation far beyond what standard shells would produce. What is most disturbing in recently declassified reports is that Navy Ordnance had run simulations predicting exactly this scenario. Engineers had calculated a 17% probability that torpedo damage could trigger a proximity fuse chain reaction. The risk was deemed acceptable, given the strategic importance of the technology. Within hours of the Juneau's destruction, a classified ultra-secret directive was issued from Naval Operations. All references to the ship's special cargo were to be immediately expunged from records. The surviving ships were ordered not to return to search for survivors. Officially, this was to protect them from further submarine attacks. Internal communications reveal a different concern. Floating debris might contain recoverable proximity fuse components. The cover-up was immediate and comprehensive. All cargo manifests showing the proximity fuses were altered to show only standard ammunition. The 10 surviving crew members were debriefed under national security protocols and sworn to absolute secrecy under threat of court-martial. Medical reports on the few recovered bodies were classified for showing radiation exposure consistent with proximity fuse components. The official report attributed the catastrophic explosion to a direct hit on the ship's magazine. That was technically true, but deliberately misleading. Most cynically, the Navy recognized that the tragedy of 5 brothers dying together created the perfect cover story. The Sullivan family's sacrifice became a national sensation, inspiring the war effort while diverting attention from questions about why the Juneau exploded so catastrophically. The Fighting Sullivan brothers appeared on war bond posters, inspired the movie The Fighting Sullivans, and even had a destroyer named in their honor. Their parents, Thomas and Aletta Sullivan, toured the country raising support for the war effort, never knowing their sons had died protecting experimental technology that would ultimately help win the war. The strategic imperative was clear. The proximity fuse program could not be compromised. By 1944, American ships equipped with these fuses would destroy 74% of incoming kamikaze attacks. Admiral Nimitz would later estimate that the technology saved over 7,000 American lives and shortened the Pacific War by approximately 6 months. But for 76 years, the truth about the Juneau's cargo remained America's most tightly guarded naval secret, buried deeper than the ship itself. The truth began to emerge on March 17, 2018, when the research vessel Petrel, funded by Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen, located the wreckage of the USS Juneau in the depths of Iron Bottom Sound near Guadalcanal. What they discovered immediately contradicted the official narrative. The debris field stretched over half a mile, far too extensive for a conventional torpedo sinking. More tellingly, the ship's midship section had been completely obliterated, with metal fragments showing evidence of extreme heat consistent with a massive internal explosion rather than external damage. When remotely operated vehicle cameras surveyed the wreckage, they captured images of distinctive metal fragments later identified as components of proximity fuse casings. The underwater footage revealed something else startling. Radiation detection equipment aboard the ROV registered anomalous readings consistent with the decay products of radium-226. This physical evidence corroborated what began emerging through declassification. In 2019, as part of a broader Manhattan Project documentation release, files regarding Project Curare were made public for the first time. These documents revealed the experimental proximity fuse program and specifically mentioned USS Juneau as a transport vessel for the technology. Further confirmation came when the Naval Research Laboratory, responding to Freedom of Information Act requests from Sullivan family descendants, acknowledged the presence of VT fuses aboard the Juneau. The technical report concluded that the catastrophic nature of USS Juneau's destruction is consistent with the detonation of multiple proximity fuse units in an uncontrolled chain reaction. For the Sullivan family descendants, the revelation was both shocking and vindicating. Grandson Kevin Sullivan told reporters that they always wondered why the ship disappeared so completely, and now they knew their family did not just die in the war. They died protecting technology that helped win it. Marine archaeologist Dr. Robert Ballard, who examined the wreck footage, concluded that this was not a conventional sinking. This was a catastrophic explosion from within. The ship did not sink. It disintegrated. Only an internal detonation of experimental munitions could create this pattern of destruction. The technology that doomed the Juneau was finally exposed by technology that did not exist when she sank. Advanced underwater robotics, sonar mapping, and digital analysis tools could read a seabed like a crime scene. The revelation of the Juneau's secret cargo forces us to reconsider the nature of sacrifice in wartime. The proximity fuse technology that destroyed the Juneau would go on to become one of the war's most decisive innovations. By 1944, when Japanese kamikaze attacks began in earnest, ships equipped with proximity-fused anti-aircraft shells could create defensive barriers that destroyed aircraft before they could reach their targets. The numbers tell the story of the technology's impact. At the Battle of Okinawa, ships with proximity fuses shot down 71 aircraft, while ships with conventional ammunition accounted for only 9. By the end of the war, over 1 million proximity fuses had been manufactured, technology refined through lessons learned from the Juneau disaster. The 5 Sullivan brothers and their shipmates unknowingly transported the very technology that would have protected them had they survived to see it deployed. Their sacrifice represents the tragic paradox at the heart of technological warfare. Breakthrough innovations require testing in combat conditions, sometimes at devastating human cost. Was the sacrifice worth it? By cold strategic calculation, absolutely. The 687 lives lost aboard Juneau must be weighed against the estimated 7,000 American servicemen saved by proximity fuse technology. But such calculations offer little comfort to families who lost loved ones. What's unforgivable is not that the Navy transported experimental technology. It is that they concealed the truth for generations, denying families the full knowledge of how and why their loved ones died. The Sullivan family became America's symbol of wartime sacrifice, all while being denied the complete story of that sacrifice. Today, as the USS Juneau rests in her deep-water grave, she represents both technological triumph and moral failing, the ship that carried a war-winning weapon, and the truth that was sacrificed to protect it. This revelation also raises uncomfortable questions about modern classified weapons programs. What experimental technologies are being tested today? What risks are being taken? Who bears those risks? The legacy of the USS Juneau is not just about 5 brothers or a sunken ship. It is about the price of progress paid in human lives and the obligation to honor that sacrifice with truth rather than convenient myths. The USS Juneau and her crew of 687, including the 5 Sullivan brothers, did not just die for their country. They died protecting a revolutionary weapon that would save thousands of American lives and help win the Pacific War. If you want to uncover more classified military histories that shaped modern warfare, subscribe to Ocean Attacks now. Your support helps us dive deeper into the secrets still waiting to be revealed beneath the waves.